Hey everyone, this is Carmen Rojas. Apologize for just being about a minute behind schedule. We've had some technical issues going on here, but I am so grateful to Eric Enge for giving just about 30 minutes of his time today to talk to us about Panda 4.0, what we need to know, what we can take from this is just some valuable tips, how we need to optimize our sites and move forward with it. So welcome, Eric, to the Camel Jacket Chat with no Camel Jacket today.
Well, there you go. I don't have a camel jacket either. In fact, I have bright orange. But thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Well, let's just hop right into this because I know we do need to kind of move through this very rapidly. So if you could explain to the audience a little bit, what is Panda 4.0? I know I wrote a blog about it today and posted it, but if you could, in a very quick synopsis, explain what is Panda 4.0.
I will. I'm going to give just a brief part of the history leading up to it as well, because I think the context is important to understand why it's significant that Google chose to announce this release. Way back in time, people argue about whether it was February 23rd or February 24th, 2011, Google released the initial Panda. And for a while, they announced every Panda release. And then after a period of time, it was January-ish of one year, I think it might have been last year, they announced that they were going to stop announcing them and that Panda had been integrated into the main algorithm. And so that made it sound like it was just going to be, invisible, and you wouldn't have these refreshes going on. That proved not to be the case. They were still doing monthly updates to it, and which they said rolled out over 10 days. They were just no longer as jarring, perhaps, and they weren't announced, right? The market just detected it. Well, since that date, this particular release, the Panda 4.0 release that just came out, was the first time they've publicly announced a release, and they gave it this designation of 4.0, which, every time you go to a new major digit, it makes you think, oh, it must be big. And in some ways, it was big. First of all, Matt Cutts suggested that it would be a kinder, gentler Panda. And we certainly have seen sites that were hit by Panda that regained some but not all of their traffic. And that may or may not be because they did enough to fix them, or it could be just because Google lightened up on the algorithm a little bit. I'll give you an analogy to explain it. You might go into your dining room at your house and you might have a slider switch for your lights up and down. It's like this continuous slider, and historically you can think of it as the Panda switch has been dialed high, so if they found anything they're concerned about, it had a big impact. Well, they kind of slid that slider back a little bit. Didn't change whether it was detecting a Panda problem or not. It just changed how bad the consequences were. So that's where the comment about it being kinder, gentler, I think, comes in. On the other hand, lots of new sites were hit. And got impacted. So it's clear that they also expanded the number of different ways which they were detecting people as being eligible for a Panda hit. So that's the 3-minute rendition of what Panda 4.0 was all about.
So it's them kind of tempering it, trying to bring it into an equilibrium where they're filtering out the bad stuff but still keeping in the good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, think of it this way: if you got hit by Panda and let's say you were monitoring 100 rankings and they on average dropped 10 positions, and let's say you didn't do anything, when Panda 4.0 came out, maybe they would only have dropped 8 positions. Mm-hmm. Okay, so a little less impact for the same poor quality content, to put it in Google's terms. Mm-hmm. That was part of it. But they also did detect more sites and actually have more sites get hit by Panda too.
Mm-hmm. So, now, go ahead.
No, go ahead, ask a question.
I was going to say, I know here with our clients, obviously you can't predict everything that's going to be in the algorithm. Google keeps that a very, very, very closely guarded secret. It's kind of like the recipe to Coca-Cola, you know. And so most of our clients, I think, are weathering this storm pretty well. We had one or two lose one or two, but you can, that happens in a day, in a time period often. Did you find that with many of your clients, and I'm not asking you to name names, but did you find any that did take a hard hit?
So amongst our client base, we did not really have any who took a hit. We had two really significant recoveries and from people that we were working on, and several partial recoveries, which might have been just more that moving that slider up and down kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I know of lots of sites that did get hit, and you can just fish around in the trade press, and you'll see sites get mentioned. Search Metrics does their winners and losers posts, and you could see people who lost a lot of traffic that day.
In today's blog, I lost some light there. That's not helpful. I talked about eBay was one of the ones that took a hit. They went from 6th to 25th on some of the blog readings.
Yeah, no, eBay was listed, but I think there's been analysis that's come out that suggested that it was not Panda, but something else. To be honest with you, I haven't read it in that much detail, so I don't really have much to comment on that. But it seemed like a fairly thoughtful. There's two different articles I saw that suggested that it was believed to be something other than Panda, but I can't really comment. I didn't dig into that one.
Well, and that's really kind of the fun, if you want to call it fun, of Google, is that you really can't ever pinpoint exactly. I mean, they're very, very good at coming out with these algorithms and whatnot, and that's the whole point, is that you can't point a finger at it and say it was that thing that caused this change, and it's a little bit slippery in that sense, and that's part of what makes them Google.
Yes, I think that's. You're right. It is a very big part of the algorithm, or the strategy for Google is that the more obscure the algorithm is, the better job they can do of fighting against people who are, using spam tactics.
Right.
It's really pretty fundamental for them. If they could have pulled off the table the Larry Page, Sergey Brin thesis, so that no one ever saw it, nothing would make them happier than being able to do that. You can even underscore that with the story, early last year, PageRank stopped getting updated, and at a later date, Matt Cutts reported that they had broken something while they were doing something else with one of their APIs, and they had accidentally broken PageRank updates, and he kind of indicated there was no timetable for fixing it. And a little later, I think it was December of last year, something like that, a PageRank update came through, and the way it was expressed was like, oh, we accidentally unbroke it, like they regretted it. And I don't doubt, yeah, right, I don't doubt that it was an accident that they unbroke it, because that doesn't really serve them well to have that out there.
Yeah, I could see where that would be a bit of a problem for them. But I bring that up to just kind of highlight the point that and I'm certain that those that did get hit, eBays and whatnots have, huge staffs of highly talented people, that did the best that they could. But if you're kind of, if you're not as big as eBay and you're trying to do this on your own, managing the Google algorithm can be a very tricky thing to do. Even for those of us that consider themselves to be professionals at it, this is what we do all day, and there were still a few that that had some negative consequences to the algorithm change. So if you're going at it alone, I'm not trying to say that you're doomed, but just be prepared, to really have to do some homework and some research to fight that battle well. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, you do really have to, well, you kind of have to take a deeper view of your strategy. In my opinion, you have to have sort of a more holistic approach to the way you do everything, and it's not always that easy to do, particularly if you're a small business. But if you want to be able to avoid an algorithm like Panda, then you've really got to find some way to publish content which is clearly exceptional and differentiated from what other people are doing. Very hard to do if you're a small business and have very limited time to invest. So it gets really dicey, and then it does put you in the boat of having to be very attentive to what's going on, and being able to react and try to recover.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of why you and I are still employed or still have businesses, because
Sure.
because we do a pretty good job at being able to take on those roles and responsibilities so that business owners can run businesses, and they don't have to necessarily be the ones that do this, because you and I like this, and I think it's kind of a funny thing when you look back at our profiles, how many things we share in common, but a tendency to want to be more analytical and wanting to do the research and finding out the nuts and bolts and the pluses and minuses here and there is something that you and I do definitely share in common.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now, one post I did want to put up, and I'm going to summarize it because it's just a little bit lengthy, is basically from DJ Farnsworth, if I'm saying that correctly, DG Farnsworth, excuse me. And he basically is talking about he was working in a company that was dependent on their page ranking from the old, the traditional SEO style. And when the pandas and penguins came out, his company took a huge hit, and a lot of people were fired, and some negative consequences came out of that. And not to at all make light of it, but unfortunately, it's a side effect of the scenario, and it's hard, it's sad. I never want anybody to lose their job, but it's kind of one of those things where if you're dependent upon the old way of doing things and things evolve and change, you're kind of out of luck. What would you suggest to him?
So yeah, it's a very hard situation, because when people are hit by Panda, it very often means that they need to make pretty fundamental changes in their website, and it often, if it's a web-centric business, it may be as basic as their business model. Recovering from Panda is often very, very hard, and we work with a lot of clients on this, and it becomes a matter of trying to get them to understand how significant the change is that they need to make, and so it's a very tough spot. And we have one client that I was meeting with last week that became a client because they had a Panda penalty, and we're trying to help them on recovering from it and running into some resistance in some of the changes. And finally, I got on a call with them and said, look, your business is under assault. Your way of life is under assault. And what you're doing and the way you're trying to refine around the edges of that isn't going to fix this. And if you stay on that path, you will be gone as a business. This conversation I was having. Wow. So you really need to find it in yourselves to really restructure how you think about it. And what we got into after that was, basically You have to stop thinking about ways to work around Google and start thinking about ways to design websites that have fantastic customer engagement.
Mhm.
And you know, exceptional differentiated content and fantastic engagement. And instead of, well, what if we tweak this or tweak that? Or I see this other site over there, they didn't get hit by Panda, and they're committing all these sins that you're telling us to fix. It isn't that simple. You know, you really have to step back and reevaluate how you're doing everything, quite honestly. You know, so I don't know the specifics of DG Farnsworth's situation, so I can't you know, say I'm offering specific advice, but
Sure.
I do know that you know, if you had an SEO dependency and you got in the habit of doing things because you knew that they would work for SEO, even though that wasn't your focus, even if you were still producing fantastic content, but you organized a certain way, you studied the topics on a certain basis, or whatever you might have done, then you can quite, even though you're quite well-meaning in your business, get tagged by this algorithm. You know, it's a very jarring experience, but
Yeah,
anyway.
I mean, it sounds to me like, you know, and it's hard, I think, sometimes when you are not the decision maker for your website, you know, whether that's the owner or a marketing person or a webmaster or whoever. But, you know, when you're not the decision maker and you're an employee and you see these things happening out on the horizon and you're, you know, even if you sound the alarm and again, you're not the decision maker, um, you know, then it could be rather scary, I would imagine. What would you suggest to somebody who perhaps as an employee and has heard about this, maybe they're watching this HOA, what can they go in and tell their boss? How would they persuade their web decision maker to make these changes?
Yeah, well, there's so many different circumstances that to that, Carmen, that really guide where that decision maker in that business may be. But I think that the core thing is to realize that if you're designing your business around Google, and Google is designing their business around detecting the best value for end users, right? You want to make that leap ahead. So what I'm trying to say here is, so many people have thought about designing their business for Google, and you know, to get traffic from Google around things that work now, and a lot of people made a lot of money that way for a while, and a lot of those people aren't making so much money anymore. And you want to think the way that Wayne Gretzky did when he played hockey. He always used to talk about skating to where the puck is going,
Mm-hmm.
right? And great saying. I'm not even that much of a hockey fan, but a fantastic saying. I'm a fantastic athlete and one of the best to ever play that sport.
Right.
And you know, you just have to do that. And you know, Google is relentlessly going the direction of finding, for the, you know, for the organic part of their search results, the content that brings the highest satisfaction to users. Well, that should be your direction as well. And there's a second thing that's really important to mention here too, is the big trap that everybody falls in is, not everybody, but a lot of people fall in, is they say, oh, look, if I point at this web search result here, I could see someone who's doing all these spammy tactics and they're ranking anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's a deadly trap because Google says more than 200 factors. I believe that's a you know, a macro level number. There's probably thousands of real factors that go into their search algorithms, and you can't ever unravel that. You know, so why does so and so rank higher than me? At a holistic level, oh, because they have these kinds of links and visibility in the market, you can. But if you try to get down to details, it's because they use so-and-so keyword many times, or they have this site architecture, that many pages, or their content is this quality. You'll kill yourself. We know what the best practices are.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because I mean Google's told us in their own kind of language, what they're looking for and what they're wanting. And if you think about it from business owners are a lot of who we work with, and if you think about if you make them think what makes their business work and what makes their business profitable, and then put that into the context of Google and how Google works and what makes Google profitable. And obviously, just like any other business, they try and align themselves and drive things that continue profitability. Well, so does Google. So if you align yourself with what makes Google money, Google will love you.
Right.
If you're making Google money, Google will love you, and they will send all kinds of traffic to you. But if you're doing things that irritate them, and what irritates them is when their customers are irritated.
Right. Yeah. I mean, exactly. So, and so that's really it's the right description. The part that makes it hard is for people to accept is that's a correct way of looking at it. Something like 70 or 80 or maybe 85 or 90% of the time. Mm-hmm. You will always be able to find exceptions.
Of course.
Somebody's doing it wrong and it's working for them. Somebody's doing it right and it's not working for them. And it's very frustrating, but your odds-on best bet, no matter who you are, is to do it right. And the overwhelming likelihood is that it will work for you. Unfortunately, it's not a game where there are any guarantees. That's the reality of our world.
Right, and I think one of the nice things that I know you and I, again, share in common is the reliance on analytics. Mm-hmm. And, so even when you are trying to, if you've gotten off track and you're trying to get back on, the fact that you and I are so comfortable in analytics really helps us steer better back into the stream. If you're not using analytics and you just try and adopt the practices, then it's very hard to detect if you've oversteered or understeered or, really where you're at. And all of that.
No, the analytics are very valuable because, if you're persistent, even if it doesn't work for you initially, and you adjust and you keep making changes, then and adapt and try new things and start to figure out what's working for you, and that's a good way to go.
We've got a real quick question here. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I know we're coming up on. We just wanted to do this for 30 minutes, so I wanted to see if we could sneak this in.
Yeah.
And Denver Prophet Jr. says, he's talking about valuable content. So if I write about, how to put a cog in a peg, and 177,000 others have done the same thing, how you could put out signals. And I'm not going to answer this for you. I'll let you certainly answer that. But one of the things that I know that we've kind of discovered is that, if Google senses that other people find your content valuable, then it likes that. It likes that you are popular, that your post is popular. So that's where doing a lot of the social media things can really help, particularly on Google+. If you post the same post that 177,000 other cog manufacturers are doing, but yours is one of the few that's getting traffic and getting a lot of click-throughs from Google+ onto to that page, then Google tends to generally like that and reward you because it senses that. But that was one of my initial comments. But go ahead and add some more.
So what I would say is that, from my perspective, you want to find out how to get some different spin on that article. so that it has some other element to it. Remember that Google does like diversity, and I always give the example of how to make French toast. If you do the search in title colon and then in quotes how to make French toast, which returns all the web pages that Google knows about that has how to make French toast in the title tag, you get 31,500 results. That's a lot of people writing about French toast, and so same thing with your cog manufacturer. Google only needs 5 answers for how to make French toast, quite honestly, right? But they do look at how to diversify things. So there's videos when you do that search. Denver, maybe a video is a way to do it, and that would be a very different way to do it, or a podcast, or some other kind of way of differentiating the content. Maybe there's a vertical aspect of the topic that you can take really deep. So everybody writes about how to put a cog on a peg, but you write about how to put a square cog on a round peg, and so nobody else has done that. So to find some way to make it different. Another thing that I would say is maybe you need that article on your site because it's sort of the basic price of entry. Same as if you're running a mortgage site, you need your article on 10 mortgage tips, which everybody and their brother has written about, right? But make sure that those articles aren't the only ones on your site, and that you supplement with a lot of other content which is differentiated. So maybe you have the generic cog on a peg article, but then you have the square peg on a round cog article, and then you have the
environmentally cog, and
and you have these other variants and the video, and you bring it to new levels, and you find those ways. No matter how crowded your market is, honestly, you can find ways to differentiate still, and you have to focus a lot of your content there. So now Google sees your site differently, as does the marketplace overall. Gives you a better chance for your generic article to rank higher too.
Right, and there's a really great. I won't go into all of it, but Guy Kawasaki talks about being unique and valuable. Right. I mean, you can in the 4 quadrants of that, and if you're not unique and you're not valuable, then that's not where you want to be. You want to be unique and valuable. So finding ways to write content that do that is obviously the goal. Okay, well, I promised you 30 minutes, so just the last minute or two, if you've got any calls to actions, if we don't know where they can find you on Google+, which I don't know who that would be, but how would they find you? How can they connect and engage with Eric Enge?
So, well, Google+ is plus Eric Enge, so that's fairly straightforward. Twitter is @StoneTemple, Stone Temple, just one word, and stonetemple.com is the website. Happy to connect with people and interact online. Always happy to have conversations. And, just very briefly, we're a digital marketing agency, and that's what we do.
Great. Well, I, for one, am very grateful. I know that you are a very busy man, and so I appreciate the 30 minutes you were able to give. If any of you have any other questions and you want to kind of post them in the comments, then I'm sure Eric will be able to get back to you and respond to your question in a timely way. So that's the best way to get more questions in if you've got them. And you can also listen back to us. The Camel Jacket Chat meets on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tomorrow we are talking to Miss Charlotte Pierce with the, I never can get it right, the Independent Publishers of New England. I think that's how that goes.
Got it.
And we're going to be talking about publishing. So we're going to find, all of you out there who have been giving thought to writing a book, all of that good stuff, then this is what we're going to talk about tomorrow. How do you write a book? How do you get published? All of that good stuff. So please join us tomorrow. Thank you again to Eric. Leave your comments, and we'll see you tomorrow at the Camel Jacket Chat.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.